Are you confused about what instructional design is? Or are you maybe thinking of becoming an instructional designer, but you're not even really sure exactly what you'll be doing? If so, you're in the right place. Hey, it's Jeff with YourLearningCareer.com. I've been an instructional designer for the past 20 years. So today I'm going to break this down for you. I'm going to make it real easy for you to understand what instructional design is and what an instructional designer does. The way I like to explain it is this. Most of us, wherever you work, you've been in some kind of training class. And if you think about a training class, and let's use customer service, for example. If you work for a company and you are in a customer service training class, the person training that class doesn't just show up and teach the customer service class from the top of their head. They don't just make it up as they go along. There is a plan for what is going to be covered in that class. And that's what instructional design is. It's the creation of that plan and the materials that go along with that plan to make the course happen. And I'm using an instructor-led course as an example, but it's the same with e-learning. It's like you don't just throw a whole bunch of stuff into an e-learning course, you plan it out ahead of time. That's what instructional design is, and that's what an instructional designer does. We're the ones who create the plan, and then we're the ones who create any materials that need to support that plan. If you've been looking into instructional design or becoming an instructional designer, one of the things you've probably seen are a lot of the different instructional design models and instructional design processes. I'm not going to go into specifics here, but I do have a video where I talk about some different instructional design models. I'll link to it here and in the description. You definitely want to have some kind of process in place to keep you on track. Let's see what that looks like in a real world scenario. There was a sales leader who brought a topic to our department. There was a product that she felt her team was not selling enough of. Their sales were low. And she felt like there needed to be some training developed to address that issue. So she came to our team, requested this training, and we started the instructional design process. So the first thing we did was we started asking some questions. And the big question to ask is why? Why do you think new training needs to be created for this situation? And obviously in this case, it was, sales are low, they need something. And then we said, well, why do you think sales are low? Why do you think training is going to help this? And she said, well, I think maybe they don't know about the product and they need to, I think they need a refresher to help them understand more about the product. So we gathered that information from her. But then the next thing we did was we went out to the field. We talked to the salespeople because we wanted to find out from them, why aren't you selling this product? And this is where the real magic of instructional design happens. Because sure, you can take an order at face value. You can say, the leader said I need to create training. Let's create training. You can do that. But a lot of times if you do that, you're going to waste a lot of time. So let me tell you what we found out. When we started talking to the field, we learned that there was an extra step for this particular product. There was an extra step where some approval had to come from another department. And what we were told was that that extra step often delayed the approval, and clients would get irritated because it would make the whole everything take longer. And so a lot of salespeople were like, you know what? I'm not gonna sell this thing because it's not worth it. It's causing dissatisfaction with my clients. It's not that much more, as far as commissions go. I'm just leaving it alone. As you can imagine, that was very powerful. Not only did we uncover this issue with the process, but we also saved a lot of time, because had we just gone and developed the training, without really asking any questions, we would have wasted our time, we would have wasted the salespeople's time, and money, right? That's where, when you follow an instructional design process, when you start with an analysis and you really start asking questions, it becomes super valuable. So that's an example where we ended up not creating training, right? Because it wasn't needed. But what about when we identify that, yes, training is needed? So an example of that is we had a leader come to us who wanted some training on a new product. Hey, there's this new product, it's coming out next quarter, and we would like to have training available for the salespeople so they can be prepared. Now that was one where when we were asking some of the questions, it became clear that yes, training is going to be needed. So then there's still so much that you have to do as an instructional designer. So now you've got to determine, okay, what are we going to include in here? And so when you're doing something like a new product, there are usually some subject matter experts. Maybe there are people who developed this product, right? And that could be a good group of people to go talk to. Now, usually what happens though, when you start talking to these subject matter experts about a new product, they're going to be very enthusiastic about it. And they're going to tell you a ton of information. So another thing you have to do as part of instructional design is you have to sift through all of this information. So that's something I always think of myself as. I think of myself as a filter between the subject matter experts who want to throw all of this information into the training and the learner, because you can't throw everything at the learner. You have to be sensitive to how much they can take in. Well, not only that, you have to be sensitive about how much do they really need? What information do I actually need in a training course or session versus, what's information we can put maybe on the company intranet, or what's information we can put in a job aid that I can access later when I need it. So those are some of the things you also have to determine as part of the instructional design process. And that's why I say, you can't just automatically say, oh, I'm going to build a storyline course for this new product, because there are so many factors to consider. Sometimes it's appropriate to create a self-paced course, or maybe a short explainer video, something that the person can access on their own. But oftentimes we find that, hey, there's maybe some complexity here, and this isn't something we want them to just take on their own. This is something where we want them to be together. We want them to be able to ask questions. Maybe there's a situation where we want them to be able to practice, and we want to be able to observe them practicing and give them live feedback. So these are all things to take into consideration. You really want to go in and ask all of the questions and look at the whole picture before you start making decisions. Now, once you've gathered the information and you've asked the right questions of the right people, then you can start thinking about, okay, I have this information. I think this is going to be the best way to approach it. And then even once you've determined, how you're going to build it, and then you've gone out and you've created your training materials and everything like that, you still, as an instructional designer, you are still evaluating your courses, your job aids. So that's something I wanted to talk about here too, is that a lot of times when we think of instructional design, we think it's like, oh, we get this new request, we build a new training, and then we're done. And the fact is, there's a lot of revisiting training. And let me give you a really big example of that. So one of the classes I was responsible for was a multi-day class. It happened in person, on site. People flew in to attend it. It was a very involved class. We had lots of presenters, lots of activities, all kinds of stuff going on with this class. And then COVID hit. All of a sudden, this in-person 5-day class we couldn't do it in person anymore. We had to change it into a virtual instructor-led course. So that's what we had to do. The instructional design for that was coming up with how do we effectively hold this class in an online environment. So that was quite the challenge. If you're interested in hearing about different techniques to use when you are creating virtual instructor-led training, check out this video. I'll link to it here and in the description. As you can see, there is a whole lot more to instructional design than most people even realize. Hopefully you now have a better idea of what instructional design is and what an instructional designer actually does. If you found this helpful, give me a like. I'd really appreciate it. Also, be sure if you have any questions, let me know in the comments. I'm going to put a whole bunch of resources for you, links in the description below. So check those out along with the other videos here on the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.